Look at a 16th century map of the North Pole, and you'll see something that, well, it should not exist. A massive 4-island continent that modern science claims was never there. I'm talking about Hyperborea, a landmass documented by the greatest minds of the Renaissance, now scrubbed from our reality. Why did the father of modern mapping include a massive magnetic mountain and 4 distinct landmasses at the very top of the world? Right? I mean, we're diving into a mystery that challenges everything you were taught in geography class. If this continent didn't exist, then why, tell me why, was it charted with such terrifying precision? Imagine for a moment that the maps we trust today, they're missing a piece of the puzzle. Not just a small island, but an entire world at the very center of our compass. In 1569, Gerardus Mercator, the man whose projection is still used in almost every classroom and GPS system on Earth, released his masterpiece. But when you zoom into the Arctic Circle on his charts, you don't see an empty expanse of ice and water. No, instead, you see a perfectly symmetrical landmass divided into 4 quadrants by massive, rushing rivers that meet in a central whirlpool. Darkly intrigued, at the exact center of it all stands the Rupus nigra, a black, magnetic mountain of such immense power that it purportedly drew the iron from ships, dragging sailors to their doom. This wasn't just a doodle or some decorative myth, right? Firmly, Mercator was a man of cold, hard data. Earnest and factual. He was a scientist of his time, relying on the accounts of explorers, secret journals, and lost texts to create this Arctic atlas. For decades, you see, this phantom continent remained a fixture of European cartography. It appeared in the works of Ortelius and even Dr. John Dee, the court astrologer to Queen Elizabeth I herself. Then, suddenly, it vanished. No explanation, no sinking, just a slow, methodical erasure from the history books. I have to ask, did the ice simply swallow the evidence? Or are we looking at the greatest cartographic cover-up in human history? I mean, if Hyperborea was a fiction, why were the most brilliant minds of the 16th century so obsessed with its exact coordinates? You have to wonder, what did they see that we are no longer allowed to see? Grand storytelling voice. Let's take a closer look at the ghost on our maps and the man who staked his reputation on its existence. Intrigued, hushed tone. I've spent hours, digging through the official explanations, and frankly, the mainstream narrative is starting to feel like a very thin veil. Skeptical. I mean, if you pick up any modern history book, they'll tell you that early explorers were essentially just guessing. Sarcastic. They claim that legends like Hyperborea or Lemuria were nothing more than cartographic filler. Artistic flourishes designed to hide a lack of actual knowledge. Low. Intense. The experts today point to their high-tech sonar and pristine satellite imagery, insisting the ocean floor is empty and the case is closed. They dismiss centuries of meticulous maritime records as mere clerical errors or the fever dreams of exhausted men. But I want you to think about that for a second, right? These weren't just doodles in the margins of a diary. These were the GPS coordinates of the 1500s.
When Gerardus Mercator or Abraham Ortelius drew a coastline, they weren't just acting like imaginative children. No, these were the master architects of the age of discovery. Their other charts, the ones the official story accepts without question, led fleets across treacherous, unknown oceans to find entire civilizations. I mean, they were accurate enough to build empires. Yet we're told that when it came to these specific massive land masses, they suddenly lost their minds? It feels less like a mistake, and more like we're being fed a carefully curated version of the globe. If these men were precise enough to navigate the Cape of Good Hope, Why would they invent a massive continent at the North Pole with such specific, haunting detail? Mainstream science wants you to believe the eye in the sky sees everything, and that if a continent isn't on your smartphone map, it never existed. But they're ignoring a fundamental rule of the shadows. Just because someone tells you the room is empty doesn't mean they haven't simply hidden the furniture. Was it really a collective hallucination by the greatest minds of the Renaissance? Or is the mainstream mirage protecting a secret that would rewrite every geography book on Earth? But that's not even the craziest part, you see. While the historians are busy debunking these maps, I found a series of modern geological surveys that don't quite match the empty ocean story we've been sold. However, there was one detail everyone missed. A physical anomaly beneath the waves that simply shouldn't be there. I've spent weeks, poring over the transitions between the 16th and 17th centuries. And let me tell you, this is where the official story we were taught in school, well, it completely falls apart. We're told that as navigation improved, maps simply became more accurate, right? But when I look at the charts from the mid-1600s, I don't see a slow correction of errors. I see a coordinated erasure. Think about this. For nearly a century, the Mercator projection, the very foundation of how you see the world today, featured a massive, black, magnetic mountain at the North Pole, surrounded by 4 distinct landmasses. It wasn't just a doodle in the corner. I mean, it was the literal centerpiece of global geography. Gerardus Mercator, the most trusted cartographer in history, swore by its existence. But then, right around 1650, a veil of intense naval secrecy descended over the European powers. I tracked the transition from those early detailed charts to the later Dutch maps, and the shift is jarring. 1 year, the islands are there, detailed with rivers and mountain ranges. The next, they are gone, replaced by a vast, featureless, empty sea. The magnetic mountain wasn't just removed, it was scrubbed from the record entirely. Now, you see, mainstream historians will tell you that explorers simply realized the land wasn't there, but I'm not buying it. Navigating the 17th century oceans was a matter of life and death, and maps were the most valuable intellectual property on the planet. Just accidentally include an entire continent for 100 years and then delete it overnight. Unless you have a very specific reason to hide what's actually there.
This wasn't a discovery of an error. It was a redaction. I found evidence of Dutch cartographers being sworn to silence under the threat of death, and private logs from the East India Company that hinted something much more physical than a mere cartographic mistake. The naval powers of the 1600s found something that required an immediate, global update to every seafaring chart in existence. They didn't want you to know where the compass was truly pointing. And as I dug deeper into these redacted zones, I realized the erasure wasn't just about hiding land. It was about hiding a power source that shouldn't exist. But as strange as a disappearing mountain is, actually, it's nothing compared to the cargo lists I found from the ships that were supposedly patrolling these empty waters. Because while the maps said there was nothing but ice, the manifests, they were reporting something entirely different. I decided to finally stop looking at the faded ink of the 16th century and started looking, at the digital topography of the 21st. Because if a continent truly existed at the top of the world, it wouldn't just vanish into thin air. It would leave a footprint, a massive one, right on the ocean floor. And that's when I found the smoking gun. Now, when you look at modern bathymetric maps, the ones that use sonar to strip away the water and show us the raw skin of the Earth, you're told you're looking at natural tectonic ridges. But the more I I stared at the area around the geographic North Pole, well, the less natural it looked. I saw massive, elevated plateaus rising from the deep, sitting exactly where the lost continent of Hyperborea was plotted on those ancient charts. The precision? It's actually terrifying. These aren't just jagged, chaotic mountain ranges formed by shifting plates. No, they are shaped with a geometric consistency that defies every geological law I've ever studied. I mean, we're talking about flat-topped structures and sharp linear drops that look more like the foundations of a city than some random volcanic rift. It's as if someone took a scalpel to the Earth's crust. But here's where the mystery turns into a full-blown cover-up. If you try to get a closer look, if you try to fly a private drone or pilot a craft directly over these coordinates, you'll hit a wall. I discovered that the geographic North Pole is blanketed by some of the most restrictive no-fly zones on the entire planet. The official reason? Right. They'll tell you it's magnetic interference or navigational hazards caused by the convergence of the Earth's field lines. They say it's for your safety. But the data I've gathered suggests the area is being protected from public view for a reason they refuse to disclose. Is it possible they aren't just hiding land, but something much more significant at the very center of our magnetic field? Some researchers believe this isn't just a mountain, but a massive iron-rich structure that acts as the world's true anchor. I began to realize that the no-fly data isn't there to protect pilots from the elements. No, it's there to protect a secret that has been buried under ice and redacted from our history books for centuries. Because as I looked closer at the satellite glitches in these restricted zones, I noticed one specific detail that everyone else seems to have missed. A detail that changes the nature of the mountain entirely.
You see, the detail I saw in those redacted frames, it wasn't a mountain at all. It was a perfect, geometric shadow. A black spire so massive it distorts the very light around it, appearing less like stone and more like a pillar of pure, concentrated frequency. Now, if the maps of the 16th century were right, then we aren't just looking at a lost piece of land. We are looking at the center point of a reality we were never supposed to understand. Thoughtful, leading in. I have to ask myself, right? If the cartographers of the past were telling the truth, then what else are they lying about now? Gravelly, determined. The truth isn't just buried in the frozen wastes of the deep north. It's hidden in plain sight, masked by digital censorship and redacted satellite feeds, waiting for someone with the courage to look beyond the edges of the world we're told to believe in. Direct, inclusive. We've looked at the evidence together, you and I. Grand storytelling. We saw the consistent, haunting precision of ancient charts that depict a world we no longer recognize. Suspenseful. We tracked the sudden, calculated disappearance of these landmasses in the late 17th century, a time when the official narrative began to tighten its grip on our history. Urgent, low, and most importantly, we've seen the modern sonar anomalies and flight path restrictions that match those mythical maps with terrifying accuracy. Strong, defiant. The gatekeepers can change the ink on a page, and they can pixelate the images on your screen, but they cannot erase the physical memory of the planet itself. Inviting, intense. If you're ready to question the very ground you stand on and peel back the layers of this manufactured world, then subscribe and join me in the investigation. Whispering, suspenseful. I mean, we are only just beginning to scratch the surface of what's been hidden, because the maps might be lying, but the Earth remembers. Thought-provoking, direct. So, what do you think is truly being hidden at the pole? Is it a lost continent? Or something far more powerful? Let's discuss it in the comments.